I have absolutely no idea why people don't like the French Grand Prix. Red Bull rejoice, Ferrari fumble, and Mercedes pick up their first double podium of the season. There is a lot to talk about, so let's delve into my 3 winners and 3 losers from the French Grand Prix. I'm breaking the mold a little bit here and starting with a loser because we have to start by talking about Charles Leclerc. Everything was going so much better than I was expecting it to go. I honestly thought Max Verstappen would take the lead of the Grand Prix fairly early, but Charles Leclerc did so well to keep Max Verstappen at arm's length, and even when the Red Bull did have DRS, it didn't look like he was going to be able to get past the Ferrari and Charles Leclerc. It was a really, really good drive from the Monash driver, to the extent where Red Bull decided on lap 16 to completely change their strategy, get Max Verstappen in and try and go for something different. Then came lap 18, where Charles Leclerc makes a very costly mistake, not only in this French Grand Prix, but in the title challenge as well. He's coming up towards turn 10-11. The Ferrari's rear end steps out. The Ferrari then spins around and hits into the wall. And Charles Leclerc, all he can do is let out a scream of pure frustration and anguish, which left Formula One fans around the world with bated breath, waiting for Charles Leclerc to come back to the pit lane, wondering what had happened to the current World Championship contender. And to be fair to Charles Leclerc, when he did return, he held his hands up and said that it was his mistake. He went on to say, "We'll count at the end of the season, but if we're missing only 20 to 30 points, I know where we'll have lost it, and it will be on me between Imola and here. If I keep driving like that, I don't deserve to win the championship." Clearly annoyed at himself and now 63 points behind Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship. It's going to take something absolutely incredible from Charles Leclerc and Ferrari over the second half of the season. For me, though, I think this championship is all but wrapped up for Max Verstappen. Not to mention the mistakes that Ferrari made with Carlos Sainz too. First of all, the unsafe release when he came in for a pit stop under the safety car conditions, and then calling him in for a pit stop when he was side by side with Sergio Perez through the final couple of corners. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's another weekend to forget for the team in red. Unlike the team who go down as my first winners from the French Grand Prix, it has to be Mercedes. What a weekend it was for the Silver Arrows. Lewis Hamilton picking up his 4th podium in a row after a shaky start to the season. That is one hell of a way to celebrate your 300th Grand Prix in Formula One, and he was immense. The fact that he got in front of Sergio Perez off the start line and never really looked back, didn't look too threatened by the Red Bull, had a couple of battles, but always looked like he was going to finish on the podium spot. Not only that, but his teammate George Russell was also able to jump in front of Sergio Perez. The Mexican caught napping under late virtual safety car conditions. The green flag dropped, George Russell pounced, and that's Mercedes' first double podium of the season, even if that win is still eluding them. That double podium does move Mercedes to within 44 points of Ferrari in second place in the Constructors' Championship, and people are starting to ask the question as to whether Mercedes can nab second place in the Constructors, and if you'd have asked me 3 or 4 races ago, I'd have said absolutely not. But with Ferrari having those reliability issues, with drivers and pit crew making mistakes, suddenly the race for second place might be on. Talking of the Constructors' Championship, our next winners have to be Alpine. They finally overcome McLaren and taken 4th spot in the Constructors' Championship. Alonso being able to finish best of the rest in 6th place, with Lando Norris just behind him in 7th, Esteban Ocon in 8th, and then Daniel Ricciardo in 9th. It was very, very close between the two teams over the course of the entire weekend, but Alpine were able to come out on top and take that 4th spot in the Constructors' Championship. And for me, it's all down to Fernando Alonso. I just wanted to share with you this graph here, which shows the cumulative points of the 4 drivers in question. You can see Lando Norris, absolutely by far and away the best of the rest driver this season so far, has been able to keep that lead over Esteban Ocon over the course of the entire season. And yes, Esteban Ocon has caught up a couple of times, but Lando Norris has always been able to extend that lead again. It's Fernando Alonso which is the real turning point for me. He was basically asleep for the first quarter of the season, picking up a couple of points in Bahrain, but then no points up until Spain in this season. And you can see Daniel Ricciardo was actually ahead of Fernando Alonso for quite a substantial amount of time, but now Fernando Alonso has kicked on, and since Spain, through Monaco, Azerbaijan, Canada, Great Britain, Austria, and now in France, it's Fernando Alonso who's coming out best of the rest and is continually making up points and making up positions in the Drivers' Championship to both Lando Norris and Esteban Ocon. If we look at the Drivers' Championship right now, Alonso is coming up behind Valtteri Bottas very, very quickly and catching up to Esteban Ocon very quickly too. And the fact that both of those drivers are starting to click for Alpine, That's why they're in 4th place in the Constructors' Championship. Talking of teams who are on a little bit of a come up, my second losers from the French Grand Prix have to be Haas Formula 1. The weekend just slipped away from the American team. First of all, their elusive upgrade package has been pushed back again. It was supposed to come this weekend in France, now might come in Hungary or possibly even after the summer break. Although, to be fair to them, they look really quick still, and they were coming off the back of 2 double points finishes. But they just got very unlucky in the race for me. Both cars starting from the back because Kevin Magnussen decided to take a power unit change, and qualifying confusion for Mick Schumacher as his time was deleted for a track limits infringement at turn 3, but I still thought points were on the cards for both of the Haas boys. Until the Leclerc safety car came just at the wrong time for the Haas team. Both drivers had just pitted. Kevin Magnussen in particular was looking really quick, although lost out on 10 seconds because everybody else was able to pit under safety car conditions, whereas he had pitted a little bit earlier than most. Then it went from bad to worse as both cars were involved in multiple collisions over the course of the Grand Prix. Mick Schumacher with Joe, Kevin Magnussen with Latifi, ending up that Mick Schumacher was the only Haas to finish the race, and it just wasn't the way that they wanted the weekend to go. Whereas someone who had the cleanest race of the bunch was Max Verstappen, our final winner from the French Grand Prix, and probably should be higher up on the list to be fair to Max Verstappen, but he just makes winning look so easy at this point. We're looking at a driver in Max Verstappen who has 7 wins from the 10 races that he's finished this season, 9 podiums from the 10 races that he's finished this season. He's been absolutely dominant, and I know the fact that as Formula 1 fans, we want to keep the title fight alive. As long as Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc are still mathematically within contention of Max Verstappen, we'll still talk about their opportunity. But with a 63-point lead and over 2 races in hand now for Max Verstappen, if a couple of results go his way over the next few Grand Prix, I think we could genuinely see Max Verstappen crowned a double world champion by the time we leave Japan in 6 races' time. And you have to hand it to Verstappen. Last year matured him as a driver massively. This year, he's been absolutely relentless. Unlike his ex-teammate Pierre Gasly, who goes down as my final loser from the French Grand Prix weekend. The sun was shining, upgrades were applied to the car, it was his home Grand Prix, and it was all set up to be a wonderful weekend for the AlphaTauri man. But this season just has not been one to celebrate for Pierre Gasly. After a few years of really impressive drives, 2022 has seen just 5 Q3 appearances and 3 points finishes from the French driver. These new regulations have just not fit the AlphaTauri system or the AlphaTauri car, and Pierre Gasly has been the real loser because of it. And as much as it pains me to say, I can't see it getting any better for the French driver and the Italian team over the next few Grand Prix. But with that said, that rounds up my winners and losers from the French Grand Prix. I'd love to know, leave a comment down below with your winners and losers from the French Grand Prix weekend. Whilst you're down there, leave a like, of course, comment a pineapple as well. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers, and I will see you next time.